Uh, Today, this evening, we have the pleasure of hosting Anil for a wonderful conversation around self-leadership, the course that is on self-leadership. And today we have the second module. I'll quickly introduce to you our co-hosts for the day. Mr. Anil Grover is an long-standing associate of our organization of Anil and of Anil. He is a coach at Coherence Coaching.
મને સંભળાવું ને સભામાં
Our second co-host is Mr. Sarthak Raichaudhary. He has been a senior HR leader, vice president in Whirlpool.
You've gone mute. Naveen.
Yeah, sorry.
I
was muted. I think I was group muted.
Yeah, that's what we did last time as well.
So our second co-host is Mr. Sarthak Raichaudhary, as I was saying, head of HR for several decades, for a couple of decades in Whirlpool and other organizations, and now leading Arohan Consulting. Third co-host is Aparna Kaushik, Dr. Aparna Kaushik. She got a doctorate and she works with Volvo Eicher, and she and Sarthak have also both been associated with Anil in the Eicher Consulting Services. So welcome everybody to this session, and requesting Anil to take the lead, sir. If I can sort of kick off by asking, in this course of self-leadership, today is the second session. How do you connect the koshas, the Panchakosha concept, which comes in our Vedas and also talked about by Patanjali in his Yoga Sutras? How can you, sir, how can we connect self-leadership, the framework, with this concept?
યોગા ઉપર
Yeah, thank you, Naveen. Naveen is a colleague in soil. He's a professor in operations. And I think, Tilla, you need to mute the device of Pathik. Pathik Kothari, if you can kindly mute, please. Yes. So let me begin just by offering a prayer. So, Samastajana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadguru Brahma Vidvaram. This is in honor of my teacher, Swami Chinmayananda, from whom we all learned a lot and in whose name we do all our work, including everything we have done in our lives, I have done in my life, is thanks to his blessings. This question about Panchakoshas, this struck me many years back when I was listening to a Swamiji in Chinmaya Mission. It struck me that this whole concept of leadership that we talk about in the country, in organizations, in social sector, everywhere we talk about, we say there is a lot of management, but there is absence of good leadership. And we all moan about the fact that the world has many complex problems, but we don't have enough quality leadership. And then we remember some past leaders like Nelson Mandela, like Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, J.R.D. Tata, Jamshedji Tata, those kinds of people. So I just want to say that actually all of these so-called leaders that we invoke in our hearts, I understood early in life by following the teachings of Swami Chinmayananda that first of all, leaders are not born. That's a big lie that leaders are born. Nobody is born. And yes, you may be born with some tendencies, some unfulfilled desires, if you believe in reincarnation, even from your previous lives. So you may come with some tendencies, some talents, some gifts that have been given to you because of your past actions, whether in this life or the previous life. But pretty much leadership is about a practice, which means it's all about how do you lead your own self. And in that connection, therefore, the conversation begins by saying, first of all, how do you lead your own physical body? So the physical body, in the Taittiriya Upanishad, where Panchakosha's concept is explained, that is the outermost layer of a human being, what's called Annamaya Kosha. That the body, which is made out of matter, which is food and water and everything. So it's all the elements that are making up, and the outermost sheath, the body, how do you lead your body? We often say the body is a temple for us. And how do you take care of it? How do you lead that? In some very simple ways, even the Bhagavad Gita gives us guidance. And of course, all the Western psychologists talk about physical well-being as the first point. So how do you nurture your health? What kind of food you eat? What kind of drink do you have? What kind of bhavana you have inside you when you are eating and drinking? All that is leading the physical body. So one part is the physical health, the nourishment. The other part is the body has these organs of perception. We are observing, we are listening, we are communicating through touch. We are tasting and smelling what is supposed to help us to make conscious choices to eat healthy and live healthy. So the quality of your perceptions depends upon the way you lead your body. We can call it perceptual intelligence. And the Annamaya Kosha is associated with that. So how do you lead the outermost sheath, both in terms of its nourishment as well as the organs of perception? And then the second sheath, which Taittiriya Upanishad talks about, and incidentally, in Patanjali, the outermost sheath, we talk about the yogasanas. The fact that we do yogasanas is supposed to give us that health of the body through the asanas. But then when we go to the breath, it's the breath sheath which provides vitality to the body. So according to the Panchakoshas, that the way you breathe and the way you breathe in, take a pause, and then breathe out. It struck me that it is not just the vital air which helps in circulation and digestion, and therefore the blood that we have and all the different nadis, as it is called, inside the body. There are hundreds and thousands of those nadis inside that are invoking that well-being when we have them in the right shape. But in another metaphor, when we are being stimulated by the external environment, we are getting stimuli. We are receiving lots of messages from the environment. Then what's that pause we take before we respond to a situation? Because in the Hindi language, we use the word thehra. We keep on getting stimuli, and sometimes we simply react to them. React because of our past life tendencies, react because of our belief system, react because of our own biases. But according to the Taittiriya Upanishad, that wonderful pause before we respond, which also Patanjali talks about, that through pranayama, making sure your breath is evenly led. And the most important part of that is that pause that takes place in communication, in conversations. If you look at it, the world's most complex problems, the wars, the India-Pakistan problem, the Palestinian problem, the long-standing Ireland problem before it was resolved after many decades, it's because we don't have the capacity to have dialogue across differences. Because we don't take that pause, and we simply react based on the centuries of beliefs or decades of belief, and therefore the story continues of conflict again and again. The way you understand.
Sir, I think you're freezing. Anil, sir, your network, I think, is frozen. Chillai?
Yes, sir.
I am here. I think in between there was an internet problem, but I am here. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
The subtler than the body, the breath, emotional mind. So what the Taittiriya Upanishad says, the way you lead your mind, which means the ability to source that calmness which comes out of dharana, the whole sankalp to say, how do you source positive emotions and how do you consciously overcome the negative emotions that you have in the way you lead your life. So emotional well-being is caused because we tend to, the human mind is by default looking at deficit, looking at what is missing. And if we can only look at the positives that we are blessed with, if we practice gratefulness for what we have been given, so that particular aspect of what we have been given, to source gratitude and to feel a sense of gratitude in the way we lead our life, and then to appreciate the uniqueness of others and have that positive dimension about always looking at the glass half full through what we call the positive psychology approach of looking at the power of positive psychology, appreciative inquiry, as we call it, the root cause of success rather than root cause of failure, and always creating an environment in which people can speak up, they can overcome what's bothering them, creating a sense of community, sharing what is bothering you with trusted friends, family, mentors, so that you can rid your emotional mind of negative emotions. So the way you source positive emotions and you overcome negative emotions, and I think the Bhagavad Gita has got a beautiful explanation to that also, to say that if we practice the giving, if we do all our work with the spirit of serving the well-being of all, if we lead through a process of compassion and serving the well-being of all, then in that kind of a aspect, your mind will be calm. So leading the Manomaya Kosha through what the Upanishads also talk about, equipoise, sthita prajna. From there, we go to the next layer, which is leading the intellectual mind, the intellect, the power of discernment, the one which makes us take all the strategic decisions, make all choices. So there we talk to ourselves and say that leading the intellectual part, leading intellectual well-being is on one side having the openness in the mind to stay curious, to keep learning, to grasping complexity by connecting the dots, by overcoming fears and becoming a lot more creative. This whole aspect of reducing fear, invoking creativity, connecting dots, deciding what's most important to you, because the intellect is a higher order energy, it is subtler than the emotions. So if you lead your intellect to make the correct choices, which is why in the Indian concept we differentiate between mana and buddhi. Mana is more associated with emotions. Buddhi is more the power of discernment and intellect. So if we invoke that on us and make the correct decisions, so that is leading intellectual well-being. And finally, after that, we say from the Vijnanamaya Kosha, you move towards what is called the Anandamaya Kosha. And Anandamaya Kosha is what is called the sheath of bliss, which is that after you transcend the other four, and the nearest we can have a metaphor for leadership is to say when you are led by a larger purpose, then this imposter called ego, which keeps taking us back to the earlier sheaths, does not interfere, because often we make the statement, performance is equal to potential minus interference. And what does that mean? Interference is coming from all the other layers, the emotional disturbance, the intellectual beliefs, assumptions, and many times also the physical dimensions of not leading our body properly. So when we remove all those interference, because we are inspired by a larger purpose and we are led by values which are the higher order values, then when with that sense of purpose, you are able to invoke your full potential, and therefore you are able to transcend your ego And that is where, when you work and live every day with that higher purpose in mind, where you are dedicating everything to, like I said earlier, serving the well-being, then you become a wonderful instrument of doing work in this world. And when you always say that you are an instrument that through whom the work is happening, then you lift and elevate your own aspect to a higher order level. And that's why we talk about, therefore, Anandamaya Kosha, which, for example, in the Guru Granth Sahib, just this morning we were in the Gurdwara and the Bhaijis were singing Kirtan, Anand Bhaya Meri Maaye Satguru Mein Paya. So that beautiful sheath of bliss is where there is silence, there is joy, there is complete, you are at peace with yourself because you have become an instrument. And in that beautiful feeling of being, and therefore the practice of silence, when you are doing something only to serve and give and not expect anything in return, when you begin to lead a life like that, it's a process of evolution. But when you lead a life like that, then I think you reach a space of pure being in which you discover the very best in yourself. And so I just thought for a few minutes it was important to explain the whole journey from the Annamaya Kosha to the Anandamaya Kosha, and so that we could do that. And now, of course, I'll be very happy to answer all your questions. So please go ahead. Who wants to ask the first question?
So can I ask one question, and then I'll request Anil, Mr. Anil Grover to ask the next follow-up thing. But if you can just quickly bring us from, so clearly we understand that leading oneself is can start from by using the Panchakosha model. But from self-leadership to leadership of others, how do we connect these two? Because we are trying to learn and teach leadership. It does start with self-leadership, but then how does it make us better leaders of people, as it were?
You see, the very notion of leadership that is taught in our traditions, in this tradition, is that you are not leading anyone else. So you are saying that if you treat others with the values of with the virtues. In fact, our teacher always said to us that when values become practice, they become virtues. He said the reason organizations keep talking about values is because they are not practicing yet as virtues. The moment they become virtues, you don't have to talk about them. And what does that really mean? See, there is no desire you have of leading someone. You are only trying to do your very best, and you are serving a cause, and you are choosing a path of service and excellence. Others may come along with you. When, let's say, you are working as colleagues and others are working with you, and you are a designated so-called head of a department. But if your way of working is such that you are working with others and you are serving a particular cause, then others are your fellow travelers in that cause. You are not treating them as if you are superior to them. You are treating them as fellow colleagues who they are doing their part of the work, you are doing your part of the work. And when you have that spirit of collaboration, see, I love the notion of the leader as an architect, a social architect. See, if you convene the right people in a team around the right questions and get out of their way, you will discover that the team will find the answers. The answers don't have to come from you. In fact, many times I feel that, that the CEOs are overrated. I think most CEOs I have worked with actually don't have answers. Some of them may pretend to have answers, but actually they don't. But the wisest CEOs I know, they become fellow learners. They get the right people, sit with them, encourage the right questions. They may ask questions, but they may not even have all the questions. So that spirit of together learning and co-creating and getting ahead is a very different dimension of leadership. It doesn't fit into the typical model of leading self and leading others. Actually, there is no such distinction. We are all co-creating, co-leading, and determining. Yes, somebody's decision may be taken in terms of allocating resources because that is where everybody looks to that person for allocating resources. But when that person is allocating resources and taking decisions, the person is making sure that the interests of every member in the team are served. Now, this is the ideal that we are talking about. In the practical world, what I talk about may not always be true. But question is, how can we keep the ideal in mind to reach that?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I request Anil Grover ji to...
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Anil, for giving a comprehensive overview. I would like to begin with taking a little deep dive into the layers of Annamaya and Pranamaya, which are below the level of intellect. So we often encounter leaders who, and each of us as a human being, because this is about self-leadership, where body is the canvas, these emotions are deeply stored at a body level. Similarly, at a prana level, the inner structures are blocking the flow of the energy. Now, while asana and pranayama are the preparatory step, and Patanjali speaks about Chittavritti Nirodha, which is channelizing the activities of mind and reaching that equanimity. I'm curious to know, in your experience, how do leaders transcend these conditioned and compulsive patterns, which take over in a fraction of a nanosecond the moment the situation arises?
See, you're asking a very important question on how do leaders create that sense of self-awareness to know exactly the level at which they are leading today and what impact that is having on their own full potential and the potential of others who are working with them. See, this is a journey, and some leaders are managing out of the whole life. They're used to management based on control and based on fear and based on assumptions that unless there is fear, people will not be productive. I have coached several senior leaders and CEOs whose mental model is that, especially when they talk about, if some of them have worked overseas, they compare overseas conditions to Indian conditions and say, especially in India, people will not work unless you show them a danda. I mean, many intelligent people talk like this informally, right? Because there is a part of their conditioning. They have had perhaps role models in their life who were that top-down, control-oriented leaders, and therefore they genuinely believe that. But as they are given more and more responsibilities and as they evolve, then they begin to get 360-degree feedback. Even their families begin to tell them that they are miserable people to be around with. I mean, we all know the best test is a spouse test. You get all the psychometric tests done and 360, and you come at home and your spouse says, "What the hell are you doing, spending so much money of your company doing this test? You could have asked me and I can tell you exactly what it is." So this kind of honest, authentic feedback that you can get from a good friend. See, that's why Guru Nanak Dev Ji says in the Guru Granth Sahib that always keep a nindak next to you. That means a good friend will not give you feedback that is goody-goody. And you will not misunderstand a friend who's being a genuine critique, who's doing genuine critiquing of how you are impacting others. So I think this self-awareness on where am I getting stuck, what are my mental models, and somewhere during this series we will examine what comes in the way. There'll be a session quite advanced in this series where we will definitely examine why people do not change in the direction which they realize they need to change. Because it has become part of their whole belief system. See, because the cognitive level, they are speaking one thought. At the subconscious level, something is happening inside. And at the deep mental model and assumption level, which is actually preventing them from making a change. But it's a journey. And the first step is really to spend time with yourself. I think the best investment you can make is regularly sitting down and introspecting about what kind of impact am I creating on the people who are important to me in my life, and inviting honest feedback and developing that learning mindset. That's where the journey begins. And of course, I have seen even some of the world's most successful leaders. That's why they appoint a coach to work with them. Coaches are not appointed for people who are only having some dysfunctional behavior. It's not, coaching is not remedial coaching, which once in a while it could be. But people invest in coaching because they want to really raise their game. And I think those are other methods, but having trusted friends who can give you feedback, if you have a great relationship with your partner, that's amazing. And I think those are the steps with which you begin this work. And learning to then let go of what you're holding very close to your heart, which is preventing you from growing, because those are not working yet. But so let me just take a pause. I'm sure there are other questions. Yeah, please go ahead. Who wants to ask the next question? Is it Sarthak?
Okay, yeah, Anil. Anil, you just talked about that this is a journey. And from the entire thing from Annamaya Kosha to achieving Anandamaya Kosha, it's a journey people go through. And we have different people in this team today, many of them youngsters, students of soil. The question is, when do I know I'm ready for this journey? And is there a good time to start the journey? Because I'm sure this is not going to be an easy one. So how do I prepare myself for this journey?
There are some signs that there is time for you to ask new questions to yourself. For example, if you are feeling some sense of loss of energy, if you find it difficult to focus, if you mindlessly spend more time on social media, if you get easily disappointed in your relationship with others, if the quality of work that you're producing is not what you are proud of, all these are signs that something is missing in your life, right? And it's a time for you to spend quiet, honest time with yourself to say, what am I learning about what's going on? I love what Peter Drucker wrote this piece many, many years back, and I think it's a very beautiful piece of self-reflection called Managing Yourself. It was, I think, Harvard Business School, the HBR called it amongst the top 10 articles ever written, right? It's a very beautiful article. And I learned a lot from Mr. Muthuraman, who's, the head of Tata Steel. He had a practice that 1 week in a month, at the end of the year, he would spend quality time all by himself. His family was not with him. His friends were not with him. He was not reading a book, not watching a TV, not looking at internet. And that week that he said was time for introspection on all his different roles. So my role as a CEO, my role as a colleague, my role as a golfer, my role as a social service person, all the different dimensions of a role, my role of a son, a father, a friend. And he would say, what is it that I had wanted to achieve and what have I actually achieved? And what did I learn? And how will I improve over the next year? See, he started doing it early in life. And I think that is the reason why he became the kind of leader he became, who had a very wonderful impact with so many different places and so many different people. If you meet Mr. Muthuraman, he's a very humble person. He's a very servant leadership kind of a person. And so I think I would very much encourage that if we just do this very simple exercise, what did I aspire for? What did I actually achieve? What did I learn in the process? Then asking deeper questions like Drucker says, how do I learn? Am I a reader? Am I a listener? Am I a writer? How do I learn? Then how do I keep on using my strengths? As Drucker says, focus on your strengths. One beautiful word that Drucker says, if you focus on your strengths, you can become the best in it. If you focus on your weakness, at the most, you will become mediocre in that. I think these are all wonderful thoughts. And this comes, I think, and your question that how does one know? Well, all the signs I described about are the first attempt. And even if we start spending an hour every month on introspection, just 1 hour, I think it's the start of the journey to make sure that we can have greater self-awareness and things begin to happen. Yes, but that's the starting point. Yeah, Aparna, your question?
Hi, Anil. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
taking us through this journey. I do have a very specific question to you in this regard. While you have been talking about how the self-leadership in long run can evolve, there has been a lot of conversations over the, I would say, last decade about how subconscious mind is focusing in terms of shaping a people's personality around. But what we now listen from you, or rather have understood, that Patanjali's Panchkosha model, the seven chakras that we have been talking about, there are conscious efforts required in order to balance and influence effectiveness in the personal physical world, which is, I would say, a different concept in terms of evoking a superconsciousness from subconscious mind to superconscious mind. So when you talk about this particular context as a human resource leader, how do you suggest that as an HR professional, what can be done in the corporate world in order to integrate these practices to subsequently lead through a greater productive, happy workplace while focusing on, I would say, employee well-being as one of the prime questions now post-COVID. So would certainly like to hear from you on this particular thought.
See, three specific things. First of all, we must train all people who are responsible for any departments or units on not just having a conversation about goals and KRAs and metrics and dashboards and performance ratings. I think that it's very important to ask with your colleagues who work with you regularly, to have a check-in with them. Tell me what matters most to you at this stage of your life. What are the things that you truly value? What are your hopes and aspirations for the future? What is coming in the way of your realizing your own aspirations? How are you finding working in our organization? To what extent do you identify with our practices and culture? What is helping you to do better and what is coming in your way? What can we do to enable you to give off your best? See, this kind of a conversation begins with the person at the center. Whereas most of us are training ourselves to put the organization at the center, define goals, and we use the word cascade vision. As if you can just cascade things to people and they are supposed to then get all aligned and say, yes, sir, 3 bags full, sir. You know what I mean? I think this conversation on what matters to people is something we don't spend enough time on. Let's say we are keeping aside an hour for a performance dialogue. Can we spend at least 15 minutes opening, listening to what's important to the person? So this is the first thing. Secondly, we do all these studies, right? Employee engagement surveys. It used to start with employee satisfaction, then move to employee engagement. And of late, we are studying well-being. But are we having a comprehensive understanding of what leads to joyfulness and sustained happiness at work? What are those factors that our people believe give them that sustained happiness, which brings out the best in them? Rather than adopt a model given by a Western model, I don't want to take names, but you just adopt some American psychometric tool and American model and get everybody to do surveys and make reports and then show graphs that our engagement is here. I think it's important to understand what is genuinely giving people that feeling of deep meaning at work, what is causing real joy at work, and what can make them take responsibility for their own happiness. See, you are not responsible for anybody else's happiness, but you can create conditions in the organization where people can source inspiration and they can be genuinely happy, which means the way we design our organizations, the way we design our structures, systems, matrix. See, I was on the academic council of Sachdev in INSEAD campus, and once I was asked to facilitate a workshop for about 100 senior European leaders. midway through that workshop, we realized that the biggest problem these people were talking about is lack of trust in these some very well-known companies. And I was asking them, where is this lack of trust coming from? He says, there is so much of pressure in our companies to keep on raising our game that every time there are new process, new metrics, new reviews, and everybody is being over-reviewed. So my dear friend Francois Dupuy, the sociologist, the legendary sociologist, he published a book called Lost in Management. He said that the problem with organizations is we actually don't trust our people. Therefore, we keep designing processes we say, hold people accountable. We say, why is there no consequence management in our workplace? These are notions where we are not enabling people to do their best. So I think we have to seriously review. Instead of over-reviewing and having too many metrics and micromanaging people, we have to create an environment in which people begin to take responsibility and are genuinely happy. And third point that I want to make is, how can we bring the soul of the organization to be awakened? The soul, the spirit of the organization. See, all great companies which have lasted long periods of time, like IKEA, where Naveen has worked, or like even in Levers, or like even some of the Tata companies like Tata Steel, or the company Aisher, where you come from and where I worked for a long time. What does the spirit of that company tell us about? What is the highest that is wanting to be expressed? And how can we keep on reminding even the very young and new people who join our workplace to understand the true spirit of that organization, which is the core of goodness from which everything else emerges, which is connected to purpose, which is connected to why people are excited coming to work. Because what happens in some companies, they start very well with great spirit and founder spirit and all that. But over a period of time, a new generation of people take over, they even forget the connection to the original spirit. And they get very lost in the day-to-day management. So this is what I would say. These are the three specific things I would recommend to help people to connect. And that is the way it will move to that what you are calling super consciousness, which I will simply put in very simple terms, getting them to lead with purpose and higher purpose. So that's what I would say.
Thank you, Anil. I think what you shared with us turns a lot of traditional HR management practices on its head and forces us to rethink how we work with people, and that's truly inspiring. Mr. Sumit Puri would like to, I think, ask the next question. So, sir, please go ahead.
Sure, Sumit.
Sure. Thank you, sir. So I just wanted to quickly check, and I think thank you so much for this opportunity. I think there's the five, we talked about the Annamaya Kosha to Anandamaya Kosha. And again, to me, it's the journey from I to we. And in some ways, we're talking about even yoga is also about, the union of body, mind, and soul. Now, if I was to just look at the other sheets, when we move from Annamaya Kosha to probably a Pranamaya Kosha, or then, of course, beyond that to, to ultimately to Anandamaya Kosha, the basic principles to follow, because we all know they are interconnected, is that in Annamaya Kosha, probably we are doing more physical asanas and, trying to get ourselves in harmony from a physical standpoint. And again, the ego aspect and all of that. And again, it translates to organizational aspects. But then we look at breath work, then we look at meditation and many other aspects that come into the picture. I'm still a little confused about, the distinction when we talk about breath work in pranamaya and maybe meditation when we even look at the third and fourth koshas. There is a lot of meditation that actually happens there to get you from the mind to the intellect. Manamaya kosha, moving that to let's say the next level of intellect, Vijnana, kosha, Maya kosha. What is the best way in which we can get ourselves more in harmony? Because ultimately it's about the mind and intellect being in harmony and getting into the soul consciousness, which is the universal consciousness. So just a little bit more guidance would be very useful.
So I want to quote His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He said the key to mindfulness is the practice of compassion. Why is our mind continuously disturbed? And that's why we don't think clearly and we don't make the right decisions. It's because we are continuously worried about what is in it for me, what if I fail, what can go wrong. And these kinds of internal disturbances, they keep on taking away from our larger vision. Because we are too much obsessed with getting the right results, and we are too much concerned about the reward that we will get at the end. So even in the Kaivalya Upanishad, for example, which is the Upanishad which guides us on how to do meditation, there are first step, find a place to sit which is quiet, sit on an asana which is comfortable, neither too soft nor too hard. Keep your body erect. Then observe your breath, then deep breathing. Then begin a chant of your mantra, keep a mental picture of your Ishta Devata in your mind. And then silently, when you find your mind is getting very disturbed, silently raise the pitch of your mantra. Om Namo Shivaya, Om Namo Shivaya, Om Shri Chinmaya Sadguruve Namah, whatever is your mantra. Raise the pitch silently. And after that, when your mind is still disturbed, why is it disturbed? Because you are not being compassionate to yourself and to others. So Swami Chinmayananda always used to remind us, he said, in action, be just, and in meditation, just be. In meditation, just be. In action, be just. And he said, most of us keep on having this kind of a disturbance in our mind because we keep on feeling guilty, or we keep on having a sense of disappointment. Did I do the right thing? Was I right in doing all this? So be compassionate to yourself and be compassionate to others. If you lead your life in a fair way, where you are being fair with everybody and you are doing your best, then you will find it quite easy to be in that state of contemplation. And the Upanishads also guide, see, meditation is not a verb, it's a noun. The verb, the process is contemplation. But if you contemplate in the right way, you will reach a state of meditation where you become an observer of your own actions, where you become an observer of your own thoughts, where you become an observer of your own feelings. So Swami Chinmayananda was asked, how many hours a day should I meditate? He said 24 hours. He said, what is meant by that? He said, to be always living in awareness, to be always vigilant about your thoughts, watching your actions, watching your emotions, watching your every bit, action, emotions, and thoughts. When you are invoking the inner witness and continuously being vigilant and observing that means then you are in the state of meditation. And you are saying, okay, oh my Lord, give me that love that whatever has happened in the past, whatever mistakes I have done, I don't just keep living with them, but I forgive myself and move on to a better life that is of my own choosing. So that's the whole journey that we practice.
Thank you so much. I think this is very, very useful. So the intellect controlling the mind with more mindfulness and ensuring that we are always in harmony with more self-awareness.
Yeah, and the key to mindfulness is compassion. So that is because when you practice compassion, then you can reach the state of mindfulness. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Can I circle back to Anil ji or one of our co-panelists, please? Yes.
I do have a question. Anil, I would like to dive into the Vigyanmaya level a little bit. You mentioned discernment, and we live in a world where our leaders face a lot of dilemmas. Everything has a shade of gray. And how do they really determine what is their Swadharma that will enliven them, others, and the context simultaneously? How do they develop that capacity to do that?
I want to also connect this to what I learned with my wonderful friends in the strategic decisions group. These are all faculty in Stanford. Dr. Ron Howard, who invented the term decision analysis. I think he has a very wonderful phrase for it. He said, "You in any time when you are facing any kind of dilemma or any kind of choices you have to make, always ask yourself, what is the frame that you have in mind? That means, what is it that is uppermost? What is the overarching question that is most important to you? In some very practical terms, for an organization, are you trying to go after profitability or market share or customer satisfaction at a very operational level? But if you apply the same question to your life, what is most important to you? What's the frame at this stage of your life? That must be very clear in your mind, that what is it that you are keeping uppermost in your mind? Because if you are not clear on that, and that becomes a moving target every time you go forward, then you will be very confused. You will never know how to make a decision. So be very clear of the frame. Secondly, besides, of course, making sure that you have looked at all the viewpoints that are there of different stakeholders, different interests, you have looked at all the scenarios, you have looked at all the external issues and all that, which is, all the information that you get in making such choices, listening to all the voices, listening to all the stakeholders, invoking everybody's viewpoint in a situation. I think the ability of the mind to not get caught between the polarities, because what happens is that people begin to get conflicted. How can I have great results and also have a great process? How can I treat people well and yet want them to produce results? We get caught in this versus that. We begin to think as if a great task manager cannot be a great people manager and the other way around. Now, this in our own mind, when we think of this versus that, that's where this confusion begins to happen. And instead of that, if we are creative enough to think of options that I will be having a high contribution to sustainability, and yet I will be able to produce significant results of the material kind that I am seeking, that I can do that by treating Mother Nature well, yet I'm balancing the spirit with the material. The spiritual and material can go together. I don't have to think about, by leading a spiritual life, I have nothing to do with the material life. For most of us, that contradiction is not there, and not to get guilty that, because I'm becoming rich, because I'm making more money, now I start feeling more guilty. If you are making money in the right way, and if you are investing that money in the right way, and if you are also sharing the wealth, all that you have with the people that are important in your life, then I think that's it. So I think this aspect of being creative so that you can generate many options where you can hold both in your mind to say this and that, and not this versus that. So that's the other one. And always asking, when you're making choices, always being clear about keeping your values in mind before you make choices. What are the values which you will not compromise even under extreme pressure? So this is a question we must ask ourselves, because, otherwise there'll be always somebody who will say, everybody has a price. In other words, such people who talk this language believe that people have no values. But I think in response to such people who say everybody has a price, you must be very clear that what is something which you are now not going to compromise even under extreme pressure. And then when you keep that in mind, your choices become quite easy. You don't get attracted to things which are not in line with who you are and your values. So always being clear on that is, I think, something very important. And I think one thing I've always learned in life, that we are always working inside an ecosystem, and we also have our near and dear ones and society and the community. If we don't learn to take them along and prepare them for everything that we are making as important choices, then we will cause too much of strain to ourselves and conflict with others to say, okay, this is the best decision I have taken, but now I am at conflict with many people, whether it's in my personal life or professional life, because I have not prepared people to be prepared for what support I need for them to make sure that what I do is implemented. So I think these are some of the thoughts on using that. So thank you for asking that. Thank you.
There is a message, Anil, from Mr. Hari Prasad Verma, and a question from him.
Yes.
Just reading it out. Thank you, Anil ji, for an insightful conversation. My question is, in today's world, most systems are designed to create stimulus or a stimuli that often overwhelms one. How do you suggest communicating the idea of slowing down to leaders? In my coaching sessions, I've often seen that leaders feel that slowing down is antithetical to being an able leader in their organization, as there is a lot of focus given to the performative aspect of leading. So how can we suggest communicating the idea of slowing down to leaders? Because that is needed if you want to be the kind of leader that you're talking about, sir.
See, I'm very fond of what I learned from my Japanese friends. I serve on the board of the Shizenken University in Japan. And in some respects, I feel maybe in past life, I may have been a Japanese because I seem to identify a lot with some of the Japanese philosophy.
Yeah.
In Japan, they say going slow is going fast. Now, what is meant by that? It apparently seems very paradoxical. But what is meant by that? Here, going slow doesn't mean that you are physically not putting in enough effort, or that you are not trying to take on more responsibility, or that you're not conscious of speed of execution. It only means that you are being very deliberate about taking all the particular stakeholders into consideration, considering all aspects of the problem, so that you don't solve the symptom of a problem, but you are actually solving the real problem. And helping leaders to not just rush from one thing to the other, but by being very deliberate about the choices they are making. So I think in the coaching conversation, one has to be clear that one does not talk about speed, but one talks about velocity. One talks about a direction, and one talks about the impact. See, organizations that only talk about speed, I think they are causing some damage to themselves, because I think what we are really talking about is the impact we are creating and not just simply the speed. We have to understand that all this hurry-burry that we are engaged with, what is the larger purpose behind that? Okay, let me give an example. I heard this from the vice chairman of Bajaj, who used to be at one time the CEO of Citibank. He was giving an example about the previous CEO of Citibank, the previous CEO of HDFC Bank, Mr. Puri, who just retired. He said because Nanu, the CEO of Citibank, when he was supervising Mr. Puri, he would call him every second day to say, how is the performance, when Mr. Puri was heading the Delhi branch. He was very concerned. So one day Mr. Puri told him, see, what is it that you are seeking? You tell me, what are your expectations? He said, I am seeking this much of growth. I am speaking this, I'm thinking, I am looking at this kind of impact, the size of the market. He said, okay. Everything that you said, he said, okay, I will make a plan and I will make it happen. But you don't have to ask me every second day what I am doing. The next conversation we'll have a month from now. I will tell you what we have done. And from there on, if you're satisfied, then you please talk to me once in 3 months. You don't have to ask me every second day, because you have put me into this job because you think I'm competent. And if you think I'm competent, then why would you like to ask me so many questions? See, what happens is that because some of us are so anxious about results, we start creating this anxiety for everybody who works with us. And we try to keep on asking them what's going on. And that creates that kind of a sense of restlessness in the company. And that's where too many meetings are being called for and too many reviews are happening. So if people have developed that sense of self-confidence to say, I am working on the right things, tell me what you require. It happened to my dear friend Shyam Viswanathan. I don't know if he's part of this, from ISP. Shyam joined us in Grow Talent Company. And, after a few weeks after he joined, I was yet to get to know him. So I said, Shyam, shall we sit down and ask, what are you up to? How are you going to develop this business? He said, Anilji, you tell me what you expect from me. Then he said the same thing to me. After this, you don't have to ask me this. because you have hired me as the CEO for this executive education business. You don't have to ask me what is the progress or anything. This is what, and we will achieve that. So I understood that Shyam was so super confident and so much understanding of his work that there was no need for me to ever ask him or review. The only thing I could ask Shyam is, Shyam, what help do you want from me? So he would tell me, Anil, I'm not very good in business development because this is something that I haven't done, even though I was a global head of sales of NIIT. And in my psychometric tool, it says I'm not great for sales, and the psychometric is true. He says, but I see you enjoy people. You get people to open doors for us. You get me the business. My commitment to you is once you get me the business, you will never lose that client. That first part, I don't enjoy that much. So you seem to enjoy that. So you get it for us. But second part, you leave it to me. I will make sure we do it such a good job that you will always have this. So I think these are the examples I'm giving just to make sure that we don't sort of become too obsessed with that speed, but we enable people to be at their best. I think there's one more question and we are also running out of time, I think, yes.
Yes, there's a question from a student, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Bhavika Garg is asking, good evening, sir. My question is, what according to you is the biggest mistake you see young professionals make in the early stages of their career? What is the one thing we all can avoid at this stage when we are pursuing PGDM?
I would say the biggest mistake I've seen some people do is getting too scared of making mistakes and not having the learning mindset. I think your role is to learn. And through learning, you are going to make mistakes and you should be very happy with that. The desire to present yourself as looking good and being good is not enough. That's not necessary. At this stage, I think the best thing you can give to yourself is to be very curious, to keep asking the right questions, even though the questions that may appear to you to be stupid, but that will be very welcome. Ask questions and don't be satisfied with any answer. Keep on asking questions and keep on going deeper and deeper. I think if you love learning and are curious, that is the only thing that is important at this stage. Don't try to get into think that you are building a brand, that you should, present yourself as all that will come subsequently. Just stay focused on learning and be curious. I think that's the biggest gift that you can give yourself.
Thank you, sir. There is a comment from Mrs. Monica Sethi. Something similar I learned from a colleague from Switzerland. Less is more is a common saying in their culture.
Thank you, Monica. Yes. I think Monica heads the Harvard University Center here in India. And thank you for sharing that. Yes.
Mr. Sushil Sethi says, great conversation and learning. Can I get a recording of this? Yes, I believe there will be a recording made available on YouTube. We'll share it with everyone. There's a question from Japish Grover, Mr. Japish Grover. Good evening, sir. My question is, if an individual is aware that pursuing a certain particular task has a high likelihood of success, but feels more passionate about another endeavor with comparatively lower chances of success, how should a leader guide or approach the situation moving forward?
Yeah, I think we have come to the close of this conversation, but I would just say, always define for yourself what's most important to you at this stage of your life. Once you define that, your choices will become clearer. If you don't have that understanding of what is most important, then you will keep on getting confused. So please stay there, and I hope you get the blessing to find what is most important.
Thank you, sir. The wonderful session.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I learned a lot through your questions. And thank you, Gauri, as well, for joining. Gauri Padmanabhan is a senior partner with a consulting firm and so many wonderful friends in this group. So I also want to thank each one of you. So thank you. Om Purnamida Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamevaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurabhyo Namaha Hari Om. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for co-hosting. Thank you. Hari Om. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.